Hi everyone, it's Vu again. So in my last video, I was talking about how your college grades don't really matter and no one really looks at it. I think sort of the follow-up questions that I kind of got from that is, well, okay, so if my college grades don't really matter, then what actually matters and what do recruiters actually look like? And also, I often get questions such as, I'm submitting a bunch of resumes to a bunch of companies, but I'm not getting any responses back. What's wrong with my resume? What am I doing wrong? So I'm going to kind of group up these two questions into kind of one extended long answer. So here we go. So we'll start with the second question first. So let's say you're applying for some jobs at software companies and you can't seem to get any responses back. What's going on. One of the questions I get asked quite often is there such a thing of like an algorithm that's just not selecting me due to something? Like, how do I beat the algorithm? Is there some like grand robot looking through everything, checking everything? As far as I'm aware, I do not actually believe that there's any algorithm or ML process that's like kind of out to get you. I think a lot of that is kind of sold to other people to stoke like this fear in order for some companies to like sell more software, right? So if you look online and stuff like that at resume builders and stuff like that, they'll often tell you, oh, you know, like use our resume builders. We are optimized for the algorithm or something. And the reason why there isn't really this algorithm is hiring for a software engineering role, like hiring in general at any tech company, is probably the most important thing a company has got to do. Well, maybe not the most important, but definitely within the top 5. You ask probably any CEO out there, and then hiring is one of the highest priorities, right? The people are what make a company. If it's so important, something like that isn't left to just robots to throw into the bin willy-nilly, right? The cost of a false positive, so passing on somebody that otherwise would have been really good, mistakenly, it is very high. So that's why like software companies will spend hundreds of millions, some of the largest ones, per year on human resources, recruitment events, etc., to try to get the best candidates. They wouldn't throw that away by putting their faith into like some algorithm. At least not at this point. There's just not anything that's like quite as good where they can solely depend on it. I think when people talk about this quote algorithm in general, though, what they really mean by that is like a low pass filter, right? It's essentially the same as you going into any search website and then you can filter by parameters, right? What these algorithms really do is they take the information that is within your resume and they break it down. So they break it down like, okay, is this person based in the US? What are these person's previous work experience? What's the duration of how long they've worked? And so on and so forth. And then what might be happening is then later a recruiter can go in, because you get thousands of resumes. They can go in and they can quickly filter and then just like chop off the bottom, right? So if you're not hearing back, then it could be that there are certain aspects of your resume that are not allowing you to pass the initial filter. So with that being said, like, what are some of those things that can get you chopped off, and what are some of the most important things? So we've already established that grades are absolutely stupid. Like, don't worry about that. I would say in almost ranked order, I'm just going to speak off the cuff here. So the most important thing by far is going to be your previous work experience, right? So there's a rough hierarchical ordering of tech companies out there, right? So I would probably say, if you're looking, if this was like tier zoo or like a character tier list, right? The S tier companies will be something like Facebook, Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, maybe. Essentially any tech company that's close to about $1 trillion market cap would be considered an S tier company, right? And then the tier below that are companies that are north of $100 million market cap that solely do technology, right? So I'd place Snapchat in there. I'd probably place Airbnb in there, Uber, probably like Salesforce, I'd probably say. After the A tier, the B tier companies out there are companies that do solely technology that are probably somewhere between 10 and $100 billion market cap. And then, C tier, I'd say like those Fortune 500 companies that are quite massive but aren't doing technology at their core. Think of something like, all the major banks, credit cards, Capital One, American Express, I don't know, I'm just throwing out more names, Walmart, those sort of name brands. After that, you probably got essentially everything else, right? So it's you're working at a small company that's unknown. If you're working at your own startup that's unknown and backed by, no notable VCs, those are probably like the D, E, and F tier kind of companies, no offense, right? So if you're trying to apply for Google and all you have on your resume are these companies that nobody has ever heard of, then your only chance of really getting an interview is if you're relatively soon out of school, and then they could put you in like maybe the junior level programmer accelerated interview course, right? But other than that, then you're kind of out of luck, and that's probably why you're not hearing back. My advice to you, if this is something you're encountering, is I think the general rule of thumb is if you're trying to apply for a company at a specific tier, with lack of a better word, you probably need at least to have work experience of a company at least 2 tier below, right? So if you're looking to work at like Google, then you should at the very least have worked for a company that has a market cap of like 10 to like $100 billion, like those B tier ones, right? Of course, this is like a general rule and heuristic, but there are plenty exceptions to this. I've known, plenty of people that work at companies that were relatively unknown and have gotten interviews at Google and Facebook and like crushed it and got in. There's always going to be those people, but it really also depends a lot on the market as well, right? So if the job market is good, if the stock's going up, if Google is hiring, if Facebook's hiring, then of course they're going to expend as much resources as they can, looking as far as they can, dedicating those time to interview you, etc. But let's say it's like another recession, or things are kind of up in the air. Maybe there's a hiring freeze, or maybe just a hiring slowdown. Then it's going to be incredibly difficult to kind of get noticed or get a job interview if you haven't had pretty extensive work experience. Yeah, in general, so what do people actually look for in your resume? 95%, 90% previous work experience. And then I think the other rest of the percent is something like side projects and stuff like that. It's really your GitHub profile, or like any open source projects. If you do make it past the filter, but say you're kind of on the cusp or something, oftentimes your resume will get passed to something like a technical recruiter, somebody that is an engineer or just is well versed in engineering or something like that, that works with the recruiter, and then the recruiter would ask them like, hey, what do you think of this resume? And then the technical reviewer would probably jump in, look at your projects, and that oftentimes can be the make and break between like a thumbs up and then you going forward, or a thumbs down. I'd say the 2 most important things to do is 1, get good job experience, but obviously that's easier said than done. But you gotta just keep on climbing if you're at a point where you feel like your resume isn't strong enough. But then number 2, if you want something actionable that you can do, is contribute to either open source projects or open source your own projects. Make sure they're very clean. Add them to your GitHub profile, really publicize that, and that's going to get you much, much further. I know it can be tough. I know it's hard. I know sometimes you're banging your head against the wall and thinking oh, what can I do better? But just know that, hey, even if they don't reach out to you, it doesn't mean they won't reach out in the future. Whenever you improve with your work experience, they'll always reevaluate. It's not like something where if you apply and they say no, they're not going to take you. That'd be ludicrous. As long as you can perform the job, as long as you have the prerequisite skills, you will always be afforded an opportunity to work at the best places. So keep going forward, and best of luck out there. Thanks.